Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the 8th webinar of our Associate Member Webinar Series. Today, it's an introduction to volumetric concrete mixers presented for us by ProAll International Manufacturing. My name is Tracy De Silva, and I am the Office Manager with Concrete Ontario, and I will be your facilitator today. I also have with me Oliver Zhao, our Technical Services Engineer, and Oliver will be helping me and running our question and answer period later on. It has been our pleasure to host this webinar series and to give you all a chance to learn more about some of the products and services that our associate members provide and the opportunities they present for the concrete industry. And now I'd like to quickly go over a few housekeeping points. The webinar will be approximately 40 minutes with a question and answer period at the end. And after the question and answer period, there will be a Kahoot pop quiz. We invite you all to stay for that. During the presentation, all participants are muted. Should you have questions during the presentation, we ask that you use the questions pane in the GoToWebinar. This webinar will be recorded and posted on the Concrete Ontario website, along with a PDF presentation, a copy of the presentation, and you'll see the link below. And now I would like to introduce today's presenters. We have Andrew Coates. Andrew is Vice President of Sales and Marketing with ProAll International Manufacturing. Before being named Vice President in March 2020, Andrew held roles in the company as a national sales manager and spent 2 years as the general manager of ProAll USA in Fort Worth, Texas. Driven by passion for business and people, Andrew takes pride in the success of the organization and the people he works with. And along with Andrew, we have Steve Fillmore. Steve is sales manager for ProAll International Manufacturing. And for more than 20 years, Steve has been promoting the advantages of volumetric concrete mixers worldwide. Holding several different leadership roles throughout the course of his career with ProAll International Manufacturing, Steve is passionate about bringing mobile mixing technology to the forefront of the concrete industry. Steve currently serves as Vice Chair of the Volumetric Mixer Manufacturers Bureau, a bureau of the NRMCA, and serves on various industry-related committees and associations. Andrew and Steve, thank you so much for joining us today. And at this time, I will hand the controls over to you to begin your presentation.
Thank you, Tracy, and thank you, Oliver. It's a privilege to be able to provide this webinar today. I actually did send in this is Steve talking. It might be difficult since they're both of us talking, to know which one's which. So if it's anything that's really intelligent, and it's probably me, and if the other would be Andrew. So anyway, I did send, the first picture I sent in was a picture of me holding a 28-pound salmon, and they changed it to the one in the suit. So anyway, we're happy to be with you today to provide this webinar. It's also a privilege to and thanks to the Concrete Ontario for allowing this. We are pleased to be part of the association and have always appreciated the way that Concrete Ontario supports the industry and has supported the volumetric concrete production within Ontario as well. The nature of the seminar is a basic introduction into volumetric mixers. One of the things that we frequently deal with is, where did they come from? As many people see more and more of them on the roads these days, like, where did they come from? Kind of where are they today in terms of the marketplace, and where are they going in terms of the industry? So as we look to where they came from, that's a good question. Volumetric or proportional mixing actually goes back a long ways before truck-mounted volumetric mixers or mobile concrete mixers. So, but the truck-mounted volumetric mixers really start to take to be noticed and start to have in the early 50s. In the late 50s and 60s, we started to see a lot of them in Ontario region and also in Western Canada. But the original manufacturer, a man by the name of Ira Daffin from the Midwest US, started to manufacture mobile concrete mixers, mobile concrete dispensing trucks, and that became, eventually became known as volumetric concrete mixers in the early 50s, and he was very successful doing so. And as I said, it took off very rapidly, and throughout the US and Canada, they started to see them spring up. In Ontario, particularly in the GTA area, a couple of three companies in the early 60s were using them. Eastern Canada, or Eastern Ontario, Trenton area, Brockville area, and as I mentioned, Reimer in Western Canada in the early 1960s. You can see this picture of the mixer there from the early 60s. Now, Daffin continued to manufacture mixers through to around 1980 or so, when he sold his company to a large equipment manufacturer in the US, who basically bought the company and then didn't do a lot with it. And from that, however, spawned several companies who had been from members who had been part of the Daffin organization. And in the US, 3 or 4 companies began to manufacture volumetric mixers. And at the same time, Reimer in Western Canada, in the Alberta area, was manufacturing mixers and was meeting the needs for himself, as well as, and his company, as well as several people who were asking him to manufacture and sell mixers and product to them, to the point where in the early 80s, Reimer decided to begin to manufacture for sale and distribution worldwide. And then at that same time, the Volumetric Manufacturer Bureau was formed by these companies that had started manufacturing, which was a bureau under the National Ready-Mix Concrete Association in the US that certified and also verified the production quality and systems of volumetric mixers. From there, the industry and the technology has grown and expanded to where today we can see mixers. If you're in the GTA area, for example, it's not uncommon to see several mixers going up and down the highways. Through the 90s, 2000s and beyond, it has grown, and we'll talk a little bit about where that growth has happened, but a lot of it is related to the advancement in the technology. So where we've come from, as you can see in that picture, is a fairly basic type of mixing equipment to an advanced form of mixing today. And I'll turn it over to Andrew to talk a little bit about where we are today.
Thanks, Steve. I really do appreciate these virtual webinars. I can tell you, I think I'd prefer, though, if we could do this in person and head to a Jays game later in the week. But I guess we all have to suffer through this COVID restrictions together. So let me talk to you a little bit about what where we are today and some of the growth that we've seen in the industry. The volumetric mixer that Steve just showed you a picture of looks a lot different than the one that we see here in this photo. You can see here there's at the back end, all of our controls now are automated. And so this automation, which we'll speak to a little later in the presentation, has really allowed for a lot of growth in the industry in the last 5 to 10 years, specifically the last 5 years, as we've seen more and more people accepting this technology to be used to pour quality concrete. So we've seen this growth across North America, We've seen this in the UK and in Europe. One of the largest acceptors in Canada, the biggest market in Canada, is Ontario. Concrete Ontario has been a big supporter for the volumetric industry and for ProAll's customers and the ProAll Reimer mixers users in that region. Some of the things that have helped us improve or get to the spot where we can grow this technology and in this volume, grow our share of the market. It really comes down to the automation of the system and some of the verification that we can do now. And Steve's going to walk you through the basic anatomy of a mixer. I'll get into some of the more fine details of the technology and how that has really grown our industry and why we believe that's the next steps to growth in the future. But I'm going to turn it back to Steve now so he can kind of walk you through the basics of how this machine works and how we can produce concrete volumetrically.
Thanks, Andrew. One of the common questions we still get is, how do these things work? I've seen them going up and down the highway, but how do they actually pour concrete? And so in this picture, you can see the anatomy or the makeup of a volumetric mixer. Basically, all of the materials required to produce concrete are carried on board in separate compartments and then blended with a high-speed aggressive mix auger on site to produce concrete. On the picture that you see before you there, right behind the cab of the truck is a water tank. The long bin is divided and has coarse and fine aggregates. Towards the back of the truck is a large bin for the cement powder. And then the high-speed mix auger right at the very back of the trucks. The materials are dispensed in exact proportions based on the mix design and the required concrete that you want to produce, and are mixed on directly on site. The white tanks that you see on the side, the admixture or liquid admixture tanks, in this case, the ProAll Commander and most modern volumetric concrete mixers can provide additive, can mix automatically up to 4 liquid admixes and can blend 4, let's say, powder or dry mixes. For example, cement, if you were wanting to blend fly ash, or say a powdered pigment or fiber. So you can blend 4 different admixes and up to 4 different dry mix type of additives as well. The mixer itself is automated so that several of these systems are actually controlled through the Commander control system that Andrew will highlight a bit further in the presentation.
So now we just want to highlight a few of the applications, some of the things that you can do with the volumetric mixer. For those of you that aren't familiar, and also for those of you that might be familiar, somewhat familiar with these mixers and have heard from others in the industry, perhaps that you've seen those mixers do U-fill, or you've seen them do certain types of work, but you're asking, can this do the type of concrete that I pour? Can this do the type of work that I'm in? And so the answer to that is almost always yes, that a volumetric mixer can be used to pour almost any type of concrete. We have customers that use these for utility work, for curb and sidewalk pours, decorative concrete, remote sites. So in these pictures here, you can see some remote pours being done up in the left hand corner there, where the materials are right on site. You can see in the bottom right corner there a bridge overlay that's being poured. That's night work with rapid set concrete that they're doing some repair work that would be done in. Usually they break that out, and the whole project is done inside of a 8-hour window, from breaking out the concrete to placing the concrete and having it ready to be driven on. A few more examples. In the top right corner of this slide, this is actually in Hawaii, and they're doing some repair work. You can see the rebar that's been set up. And I know it's a little small, but in that white machine in the background of the photo, that's actually a mixer right there on the side of the mountain in Hawaii, pouring concrete for this specific application. In the bottom right corner is a gunite pour. So that's gunite is a dry sand and cement that goes through a pump, and then water is added right by the nozzleman right at the point that it's applied. And so there in that picture, they're actually shooting a pool with a volumetric mixer that's designed to shoot pour and shoot gunite. And on the left is actually a job that was done. It's about 190 hours continuous pour. So it's slip forms there that just continued to started from the bottom, and they just continue to rise until the job is complete. This was done with two trailer-mounted volumetric mixers with the aggregates, water, and cement being added right on site. So there was a silo on site, aggregate piles on site, and a water truck used to refill the water. And they were able to use these two trucks along with two boom pumps to complete a continuous pour, no rejected loads. And that was about a 4-day continuous day and night pour to do those grain terminals. And that was in Gleason, Alberta, just a few hours from where we're sitting here today at ProAll headquarters. So we wanted to just show a few pictures. We had to go through hundreds of pictures that we have of customers using these mixers in all sorts of different applications across not just North America, but the world. And then we just really wanted to highlight here that the only limitation to pouring concrete with a volumetric mixer is your imagination, because we really have seen this equipment used to pour everything from high-rise buildings in Mexico City to decorative concrete for parks in the GTA. So with that, I'll hand it back to Steve to go through a little bit of why you might want to choose a volumetric concrete mixer.
Thanks, Andrew. Volumetric mixers can be more cost-effective solution for some particular applications or types of jobs and pours. Slow intermittent pours where there's a lot of time needed on site with the mixer. Jobs requiring less than a full load, so the short load type business. The volumetric mixer can actually carry out several short load or less than a load pours with one load, which the cost savings in terms of sending out several different transit mixers, and you could to do several different pours when you could send one mixer to do several drops. Balance or cleanup loads where you are not sure of the exact amount of concrete that's going to be required. There's a cost savings there. You do not have any waste. You only pour what's needed. Traveling longer distances or in traffic in terms of concrete quality and distance. We all know what kind of challenges, especially in urban areas or areas where you have to travel long distances, that can create. It can be a good solution for remote sites where you're wondering whether you should take a portable batch plant or what kind of equipment will be required in a remote site to complete a job. As I mentioned, multiple deliveries on a single load, and of course, after hour work, where if traditional batching would be required to have the whole plant in operation, some after hour work and jobs can be completed with a volumetric mixer without having to fire up and to start the whole batch plant. Quick picture of some night work being done on a bridge deck to highlight that particular application. Also, volumetric concrete mixers can offer better outcomes with some projects or mixed designs, areas where critical water cement ratios are required. Gunite, shotcrete that we've showed pictures of and highlighted here. Low sump applications such as RCC or pervious concrete. High slump, where you have slurries or floor toppings or SCC, self-leveling type concrete mixes. Specialty mixes such as latex modified concrete, as well as a lot of the different fast setting concrete mixes. And more of the specialized mixes we see coming into the industry as a result of the engineering and the refinement of our industry for different applications and products. Volumetric mixers tend to be a good way of applying many of these new fast setting concrete mixes. And then the ability to customize some of the products such as flowable fills, backfill, soil stabilization, recycled materials. All of these are areas where in some cases where they're kind of on the side of a bit on the side of regular concrete production, but many of these areas are actually growing areas in terms of volumetric mixer presence in the industry, in terms of continuous mixing of native soils, for example, with cementitious type materials to provide soil stabilization, and the use of recycled materials. If I put a quick slide in here, we've been working, had the opportunity to work, for example, with the City of New York. This is a test slab here. They're looking at doing testing on recycled concrete as part of their sidewalk repair program. And the little 30 down in the corner on that particular slab of this test indicates that 30% of that test slab was recycled concrete. So we're starting to see volumetric mixers being used to use recycled materials and to expand their use in that area as well.
Yeah, what are the other reasons why you would want to choose or might consider choosing a volumetric concrete mixer is the advancement in technology, and some of the manufacturers, ProAll included, have started to really embrace the technology that's available, and this has allowed for a real increase in the ease of operator use, a reduction in operator errors. And so the control system on a volumetric mixer used to be very rudimentary. It used to have, in this picture that Steve showed you originally in that mixer in the 60s, it would have just been hydraulic valves that were controlled with levers that you pulled to start and stop the auger and start and stop the belt. If you fast forward to today's mixers are all controlled by PLC systems, computer systems that are very automated. On many new mixers, what you'll find is you have to calibrate the mixer, go through a calibration process, and once that's complete and you've entered the mix design, it's as simple as selecting that mix design. And for example, say your mix design called for a 32 MPa mix, you would select your 32 MPa mix, and your mixer, that volumetric mixer, would actually pull the right amount of water that's required for that water cement ratio for that mix. It would pull the right amount of Admix 1, 2, 3, and 4, depending on how many Admixes you were using for that particular pour. But say you needed to have air entrainment and water reducer in that 32 MPa mix, you wouldn't need to set those. Everything would be controlled by the computer. You would just hit start, and it would pull the correct amount per meter for the air entrainment and the correct amount per meter for the water reducer in this case. And so that those advancements in technology have really allowed for operators to be trained much easier. They've allowed for a higher rate of quality control for those engineers that are looking for tests to show that the brake test and the 7, 14, 28-day brake test to show that you're meeting the spec that's required. You can do that with a lot more confidence than you could even say 10 years ago, because there's so many checkpoints now, and so much that can be done that's taken out of the operator's hands. Another example of that would be, there's even now sensors on, say, your gates to make sure that you've set your aggregate gates in the right place. And if you forgot to do that, the mixer would not turn on until those gates were set to the right place. There's sensors that if your sand or stone aren't striking off fully, so if it's slipping below where it's supposed to strike off the gates and you're not getting the correct amount of aggregate, that again would shut the mixer off. But obviously, if the water wasn't running at the capacity that it needed to, or any of the admixes weren't running at the capacity that they needed to, the mixer would shut off and an error message would come up. So these are the advancements in technology that have allowed for a far greater acceptance, just due to the reduction in operator error and the ease of operator use, and to train new operators and new drivers, which is always a challenge. Some of the other things that have helped the industry move forward, or helped the volumetric industry move forward with the automation, are things like data logging. You can save all of your mixes on board. Select your 25 MPa, your 30 MPa, whatever it is that you're pouring. You can also save all of your mix designs on that computer. So gone are the days where you're carrying around a clipboard that tells you where you need to set certain parameters on the mixer for certain mix designs. All of those mixes can be housed right there, and that's a huge advancement for acceptance of volumetric technology, as it just takes away a lot of the parts that were a little more difficult, and automates those and puts those through a computer system. And then another thing to highlight is the ability to diagnose. So with some of the fleet management software that's available today, you can actually diagnose, you can see where your mixer is. You can see, like a dispatch system, you can see where your trucks are and see when the PTO is engaged and when they're turned on and pouring concrete. But you can also go as far as being able to actually diagnose hydraulic issues or electrical issues if they do come up. And so if there's ever something that was a problem, it wouldn't be in the field. It wouldn't be so much guesswork to see where that issue is coming from, or how that issue has come to arise. It would be simple as finding that information right on the computer screen. So that's obviously come a long way from pulling on a lever that all of a sudden isn't working, and understanding where that issue might be coming from. So these advancements have really allowed greater acceptance of the technology, of the volumetric technology, and I think a stronger people are able to have a little more belief that the quality of the concrete, and are able to appease those QC guys who are often asking for the high spec type concrete work.
One of the things that we've started to notice in the volumetric, the growth of our particular industry and our company, is the integration of traditional ready mix, seeing volumetrics as a way of integrating into their businesses, with the traditional ready mix companies, to support or enhance the traditional batching methods, and also to provide cost-effective ways of doing some of the things they already do. Some of these we've already talked about, and this slide shows some of those things: less than a load, cleanup loads. We talked about using low volume applications. We talked about that as well. But traditional ready mix are starting to look at volumetrics of ways of adding additional capacity, as well as expanding their area reach with volumetrics, seeing it as redundancy for batch plants to provide quality concrete production at times when the batch plants may be needing some overhauling or service or breakdowns, as well as using for large on-site remote pours, times when potentially in the past maybe they would be serviced with a portable batch plant. We're seeing many integrating volumetrics to take over that part of their business as well. So this is one of the areas we see growth in the volumetric industry.
So now we just want to highlight, we've had obviously talked about a bunch of customers or people that we have using these mixers around the world and specifically in Ontario. And so we just want to take a couple minutes here and highlight two customers that one in the GTA and another in Eastern Ontario. So this first one is Cmix Concrete. Cmix Concrete was established in 2014, owned by a gentleman named Jason Toffoli. And Jason has before starting Cmix himself, has over 20 years experience in the concrete industry. And he decided to look at volumetrics because he believed there was a market that was underserved, a market in the GTA that was looking for specialty applications, that was looking for some of the things that we've already talked about, that Steve's mentioned, small loads, balance loads, different type of work that he felt wasn't being serviced by the traditional batch plant drum mix setup. And so he decided to start Cmix Concrete in 2014. Here we have a picture. This is his yard in Brampton. When he actually started, it was on a yard that was much smaller than this, just by the airport. And he's moved to this location in the last year. You can see there's 5 trucks in this picture, but he has grown his business at a rate of 2 mixers a year since starting in 2014. And he has mixer 15 and 16 on order for the spring. So he's taken a business from no mixers to 16 mixers in 8 years. And a lot of that is obviously to do with the work that Cmix does, and they should be praised for that. But he's also done a very good job of seeing the need in the market, and the market has responded accordingly. And so he's been able to grow his fleet because of there's been an underserved market that he's been able to realize, and in that has realized substantial growth in his company in the 8 years that or 7.5 years that they've existed. Here's a picture of a pour. This would have been somewhere in the GTA, as many of you have probably seen Cmix trucks running around. They don't stay very local to Brampton. They will go almost anywhere across the GTA. And so here's just some, we just wanted to highlight some concrete coming out the back end of one of Jason's mixers. And as I mentioned, since 2014, they've grown at a rate of 2 mixers per year. One more picture here of some of the work that they have done. This again would have been in an urban application. Obviously being in Brampton and being close to Caledon and out that area, they do some remote, not remote, but rural pours. But here's an example of something they do that would be in an urban setting in the city. And then just to highlight the versatility of the mixers that they use. And so they're not limited to only doing utility lines or only doing decorative concrete. They've done work, they've poured bases for pools and landscaping. They do foundations. They've done work on Toronto Island on projects there, on remote projects there. So we just wanted to kind of highlight here that it's while there may be an idea that these mixers are good for certain applications, and while we're not trying to claim that these should be used to pour a slab for a Walmart superstore, there is lots of places where the volumetric can be used, and Cmix has done a great job of proving that concept.
Another company that's have a long history with volumetric mixers is Thousand Island Concrete. Thousand Island Concrete is a family-owned business, generational business actually, currently owned by the Castle family. Many of you would be familiar with the Castles, and taking over a volumetric business several years ago in Brockville from a family that had previously owned the volumetric business, and running this business now for over 40 years. Thousand Island Concrete also has been a long history in the Concrete Ontario, in the association and in the industry, and have provided leadership throughout the years to Concrete Ontario, either in committees or support, and are a member of the association as well. They carry on a lot of work throughout Brockville and around Ontario as well, doing remote type projects and work. I've seen pictures of their mixers on barges heading to islands in the Thousand Islands area. They've to doing hog barns, to doing projects in Toronto. I think even in this picture you can see the Toronto Tower in the background there as well. Want to highlight one project. We could talk a lot about several of their projects, but to highlight one of the things that they've done in recent years is to do projects with regards to remote solar project and solar farms. Things that have required over an hour travel from their plant all through the winter and summer months. They've been able to provide concrete to these projects. They've sent trucks there and been able to unload a truck over a long period of time for these bases, from 30 minutes to 3 hours to unload the truck and create value to the customer and to themselves. And each of these farms require approximately 1,500 cubic meters of concrete, and they've been able to secure several of those contracts over the last few years. So congratulations to Thousand Islands. Keep up the good work. And now we've kind of talked a little bit about where we've come from as an industry, where we are today, and highlighted a couple of operators. And we'd like to finish kind of with where we're going. Where do we see the industry going, and what are the key driving factors for growth in the industry going forward?
Yeah, and we're up against time here, so I'm just going to quickly go through, spend 2 minutes here just running over what we believe where the industry's going. Point 1 and 2 really are that there's the mainstream concrete producers, people in ready mix, are looking for ways to grow their market share and realize efficiencies while they obviously want to make a profit. And as I highlighted with Cmix, underserved markets, and Cmix has done that both in rural and urban areas. So those underserved markets where you have people who are looking for short loads, who feel like maybe they're waiting for some of the larger drum mix companies to deliver concrete. There's some underserved markets there that continue to grow in certain applications as well, where some of the things that we've highlighted here, that a volumetric might actually be preferable to a traditional batch plant. That's where we see a lot of that need coming from. The aging infrastructure, anybody who's from the GTA who's driven on the Gardiner Expressway in the last few years can tell you that the infrastructure in Ontario, and specifically in the GTA, is looking to be repaired. And as that infrastructure spending comes through, we believe that the volumetric mixers can serve a part of that solution to repair, remodel, and retrofit some of that infrastructure. And then these self-performing contractors. So this is a big one for guys that are looking to vertically integrate their companies. We have a lot of our customers who are buying, thousands of meters of concrete today from companies. And when we speak to them and we kind of run the numbers through with them, they realize that it's actually cheaper for them to control their concrete production themselves. And so they're bringing that in and vertically integrating their company. So, with a silo and a loader and a place to store aggregate along with their mixer, they're able to produce their own concrete. And at that point, they're actually able to dictate when their concrete's going to arrive. If they want to change, for landscapers doing 3 different mixes on one site, they can carry 9 meters of concrete on a truck, but you could pour 3 meters of 32 MPa for one application, and then by simply changing your gate settings and making some small adjustments, could pour a 25 MPa or something completely different, while not having to go back to the yard to reload, and also having no waste. You know, you're not wasting any of that any material that you put on board. And then finally, the largest, and I spoke about this a little earlier in the presentation, is the advancements in the volumetric mixing technology. And those advancements, all the things that we had discussed previously, we're seeing those really foster some acceptance. As I mentioned, Concrete Ontario has been very good in terms of the Canadian provinces. Ontario has been the best for us in terms of acceptance of this technology, but we've really seen an uptick in the last 5 or 6 years as the advancements and technology have come. And we expect that is just a snowball starting at the top of the hill, and expect to see that grow exponentially in the future. So with that, I'd like to thank Concrete Ontario for allowing us to present today. I'd like to thank everyone for attending, and I will turn it back over to Oliver now for the question and answer period.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for the presentation, Andrew and Steve. So looking at the questions here, and if anyone else have any questions, please feel free to type in the question box. So we have a few technical questions coming in. Start with the first one. Have you done any correlation testing to determine the hardened air system of the concrete? Since the concrete is only in high-speed auger for a short period of time.
Yes, there have been hardened air void tests done successfully through volumetric mixers.
Okay, great. One question that I think Andrew did kind of mention, but would you be able to elaborate or kind of provide a brief summary on if a producer or a contractor want to get into volumetric mixer, what is the basic needs for the location for the plant in terms of material and etc.? Just a brief summary on that.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question. So essentially, if you are looking to start producing your own concrete, the basic needs for a yard would be you need a cement silo, somewhere to store your cement powder. You would need somewhere to store your aggregates. So typically, most of our customers would have 2 stone piles, you know, something like an 18 mil stone and a 10 mil stone that are used for different applications, and then a sand pile. And then you need a loader, usually a 3-yard bucket loader, to load that material into the mixer. A water supply of some type so that you can fill the water tank, and then the mixer itself. So from an equipment standpoint, you need a silo, you need a loader, and you need a mixer. From a yard standpoint, depending on where you are in the world, you know, I was just in the UK last week and in London saw a yard where someone was running 6 mixers out of a postage stamp of a yard, and I've seen that in New York, and I've actually Cmix, when they started at their first location, they couldn't have done much more than 8 mixers they were doing there already. So it's nice to have the space in the yard, but certainly you need at least the space to have a loader to to load the mixer, and to get under a silo for your cement loading. But that would be the basic need to get started.
Hey, thank you, Andrew. So just a kind of follow-up question to that. One huge component of ready-mix concrete producers plant audit is the air and noise requirement from Ministry of Environment. So would you be able to talk a little bit about whether an ECA or an ESAR is applicable for ready-mix facilities, for volumetric guys?
Yeah, no, the requirements would be essentially the same as a batch plant. You're going to need to meet the same environmental standards and noise standards that you would for a traditional batch plant and ready mix setup. There is, yeah, there's not. I mean, there isn't really ways to get around that, and we don't really want to try to get around that. We want to be making sure that we're staying within the regulations that are set by the province of Ontario and by the government of Canada. So those regulations would be no different than what a traditional batch plant would face.
Awesome, thank you. Just to add on that, Concrete Ontario has had a webinar on the environmental assessment back in the summer, and you'll be able to watch the recording of that webinar, and you'll talk about the ECA requirement for concrete plants, and also the change to ESAR requirement for volumetric members. Now, next question, I guess we see two questions regarding, I think, related to the certification again. Now, first one is, can volumetric mixers produce electronic batch records?
Yes, I maybe need to have that question clarified, but we have two. So there's a printer on board in the truck so that can print out what you've poured. But that printout would have the weight of your stone, the weight of your sand, the cement, the water, the Admix 1, 2, 3, 4, however many you had. If you had color pigments added, like all of that would be on that printout. But if the question is that digitally captured? Yes, every mix that you ever pour from, and I can only speak for the product that we build, but every mix that you ever do on a ProAll Commander is stored on board. And so, even if that mixer's 8 years old, every mix that it's ever done is stored there, and it's as simple as putting a USB stick into the bottom left corner or right corner of the screen on board, and then loading that into your computer, and it comes as a CSV file, an Microsoft Excel file. And then we also have a telematics system, a fleet management system. We call that the ProAll Spider, and that would allow for all of that information that I just said to actually be right at the fingertips of the dispatcher. So the dispatcher would actually be able to see all of that information right as soon as the pour was complete. They would be able to see all of that live, sitting at the home office.
That's great.
Yeah, hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Last question from one of our plant auditor, and it is actually a question that I'm interested myself. So for the volumetric mixer units, how do you calibrate the admixture dispensing equipment?
Yeah, so the Admix is a electronic Sika flow meter that is used. So it's we calibrate the water flow meter as well as all of the Admix flow meters as part of the calibration process. So really, with those flow meters, it's less of a calibration and more just checking to make sure that they're accurate, and then if they aren't, making an adjustment that way. So that's all checked right at the point of, well, it's checked here at factory, as part of our quality control, and then it's double checked by our when we send our field operators in to do the calibrations at the initial calibration of the machine.
All right. Thank you so much again. I believe that will be all the questions for today. I'll hand it back to Tracy.
Thank you, Oliver. And thank you so much, Andrew and Steve. That was an excellent presentation, very, very informative. And I hope that everyone was paying attention because we are now moving into our Kahoot pop quiz portion of today's program. So at this point, I would ask everyone who would like to participate to grab your smartphone and enter the following website, www.kahoot.it, Kahoot.it. And shortly on the screen, you will see a PIN number that you can enter. We are asking you to enter in your email address and a nickname. And please do remember that this is a family show, so we ask you to use something HR friendly for your nickname. The faster you answer each question, the more points you will earn for correct answers. And this is simply a website. There's no need to download apps. It's quick and easy. And as a little added motivation, we have some prizes for today's winners, first, second, and third. We have Amazon gift cards, first place $150, second place $100, and third place $50. So if everyone's got their smartphones out, we would ask that you please have a look at the pin on the screen, and we'll give you a few minutes to log in. We'll give another minute for anyone else who'd like to play. Okay, and at this time we have Father Time, CLP, I Inspect, Concrete Dog, Go Jays, and RCV. And we'll get started. Get ready for your first question. True or false? Volumetric mixer technology has stayed relatively the same since its innovation. Okay. Correct answer, false. Okay. And we've got RCV in the lead with 975 points. Our next question. Truck-mounted volumetric mixers have been producing concrete in Ontario since before the Maple Leafs won their last cup. And I believe that was 1967. Let's see where we go. I Inspect has taken the lead. All right, on to our next question. True or false? Volumetric mixers should never be used for fast-setting concrete mixes such as rapid set. And that was quick, and everybody got it correct. False. I Inspect is on a hot streak now. On to our next question. The modern volumetric control systems can automate the delivery of 4 admixes. Well done. I inspect, still in the lead. CC has a good streak going. The volumetric mixer mixes the materials in a high-speed mixing auger at the job site. Let's see who got that. Ah, RCV's moving up. Still anybody's game. Next question. Continued growth in volumetric mixer use in the concrete and construction industries can be attributed to all of the above. Now, I inspect, still holding the lead. 2 more questions to go. Modern volumetric mixers offer several advanced features such as A and C. Everyone got that right. I was hoping it might be coffee maker and soda dispenser, but well done. Ah, Father Time has taken the lead. And we're down to our last question. True or false? Concrete Ontario AQP program certifies volumetric mixers for municipal and commercial applications. And that didn't take long. It is true. And well done, everyone. Let's see where our scores are. In 3rd place, RCV. In 2nd place, I Inspect. And in 1st place, and our winner, Father Time. Congratulations, everyone. Well done. Thank you for playing today. And thank you so much to ProAll for the presentation. And we would invite anyone to join us in October the 21st for our next associate member webinar brought to you by MAC. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. We've had some great presentations in this series thus far, and it's great to see so many of our members coming back to learn more about the topics being addressed. We hope to be able to gather in person sometime soon, but until then, we hope to see you all again at our next webinar in October. Stay healthy and stay safe. Thank you.